You are listening to the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks.
Warrior Auburn fans, welcome to No Huddle, your source for Auburn football news and discussion, part of the E2C Network. I'm AJ Richardson, and I'm also here with Jared Davis. A-Day's here. Jared, we actually got some football to be watching this upcoming Saturday. How excited are you to actually get to see Auburn take the field? And then, we're not going to think about it, after Saturday, because that's just like the worst part of the year for football. But, up until this Saturday, how excited are you?
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I mean, A-Day's you don't learn a lot from it. Usually the people that star in A-Day don't wind up doing anything, but it is good to see the team out there. It'll be good to see what we're running under Harsin. You would love to see Calzada healthy, because then, that lets you get a good indication of, what we have with him, but that's not going to happen. So, but all in all, it'll be good. It'll be good to see Robbie Ashford, because he's going to get some reps, maybe even Holden,
Yeah.
He'll get some reps too. So, yeah, it's exciting, man. We got football. Like you said, once this is done, I mean, we're done basically until, I don't know, August. That's when things kick back in again, maybe.
Yeah, maybe in July, fall.
Okay, they got something in July. Okay.
But I mean, besides that, it's a tough, few months, because, if you're like me and you want to watch some football, it's going to be hard to not have that for a few months. So, hey, we're going to soak up this last few days of actually having something actually to talk about for football, and hopefully not, players, getting kicked off the team or anything like that over the summer.
Yeah, for real. Let's make it all positive.
Yeah. So kind of high level, we'll be talking about some transfers, injuries, the last, week and a half or so since we've talked about spring practice, and then kind of leading into A-Day and previewing A-Day, which will be this Saturday, and really looking forward to that. So let's start out with transfers. So one of the bigger ones that kind of hit the transfer portal was somebody I personally, and I just had a gut feeling it was going to happen sooner rather than later. And sure enough, it did, with Demetrius Davis, or D Davis, as people like to call him. He was a guy that was recruited under Gus. He stayed committed to Harsin after, and even stuck out last year, just to see where he's at. And he didn't even get any play time last year. So, I mean, personally, I'm sad to see him go, but I think he'll be able to do things under a different offensive scheme than what Harsin and the more pro style offense that he wants to run. Any thoughts on D Davis leaving us and wherever he'll land?
No, I mean, you got to give it to him. I mean, like you said, he originally committed to a different coach. He stayed with his commitment. He stayed with this coach, got to see what we were going to do in the offseason. He, in an era where everybody's, bouncing around real quick, he gave Harsin and Auburn a chance.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think I said on the last podcast that when Robbie Ashford came on board, that was it for D Davis, in my opinion, because Robbie's a bigger guy, has a stronger arm. I mean, the crazy thing about Davis is, he broke Texas football high school records. Like, he broke the quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals. I can't think of his name, but he broke his records. So, there's talent there, but a lot of his were kind of deep balls, kind of the Tebow effect. Like, Tebow would throw a nice deep ball, but he, there's a lot more to playing quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, but I hope he lands somewhere and does well. I mean, that guy stuck it out and he tried. You can't get mad at him. Like, he gave it every chance.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, like, we got to see very limited, option or opportunities to see him. And, the coaches got to see every practice where he's grinding it out, where he's in the film room and like processing things. And, that's the stuff we don't get to see. And, even despite all that, I mean, D Davis was just like, I'm just not going to get any good play time in my sophomore year in college. I'm probably better off going somewhere else. And he may have also, especially once you start seeing how the spring starts, shuffling around like who's who and who's getting the most reps, that kind of stuff. D Davis was, it sounds like, not getting as many reps. He wasn't as consistent, all the things that, a good quarterback should have. And he started moving on. And, it made official when he actually jumped into the transfer portal.
Kyler Murray, by the way, he
oh yeah,
broke Kyler Murray's high school football passing records.
Yeah. Which again, like people, think about that and they're saying what could have been. But I mean, I'd argue if we still had Gus, under a Gus Malzahn type, Nick Marshall led offense, you could probably have a D Davis running it and do really well. But, that's the way it goes. And we got to just keep moving on. And thankfully we have, it's crazy to think we were what, a year ago wondering who's behind Bo Nix. And now we have essentially 4 to 5, like, pretty capable quarterbacks. And D Davis was, he just saw he wasn't towards the top of that list. So he decided to move on. The other one that I'll mention over the last week or so that has decided to jump into transfer portal is Eric Reed Jr. He was a 4-star in the, I believe, 2020 class. He played secondary for us, and he decided to move on. As far as injuries go, we've got it was a pretty big list. Like, as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But thankfully, a lot of these were not season ending. They were just kind of, hey, you're out for a few weeks. And that's really, the kind of the silver lining of it all. Even though you obviously want these players to get as many reps in the spring as possible, at least a lot of these were not, oh, this dude tore an ACL and he's out for, what, 8, 9, 10 months at minimum. So, you got guys like Jarquez. That was one of the first ones that I saw. I think I saw like an Insta story of his, and he was kind of, his leg was all wrapped up, and I was like, oh, like, he got an ACL injury and he's out. Thankfully, it is not that, because his recovery time was only 8 to 10 weeks instead of 8 to 10 months. So I was very, very happy to see that. They don't think Jared, did you hear anything on what that officially was? I don't think I heard anything.
No, I didn't hear exactly what they said it was, but, and I didn't see the injury. But yeah, I mean, when he wasn't out there practicing, I got a little worried, more of like, oh, has he entered the portal,
Mm-hmm.
And then it came out that, some type of injury that require, and I think, we talked off air, usually when it's 8 to 10 weeks, it's definitely a surgery type thing. Because if it was just an injury, and you may have just mentioned this too, but if it's just an injury, usually you're kind of, we're taking it, week by week. When you go ahead and say 8 to 10, he had some kind of surgery. But yeah, I don't know much about it. I just know that, that now's the time to do that. If you're going to have that injury, go ahead, and you got plenty of time to recover before the season.
Yeah, you've got the full summer, and it sounds like, 8 to 10 weeks, you're going to be back by fall camp, ready to go. And that's really when you want to start, performing at your best, because that season's right around, that first game is right around the corner. So, yeah, I think that was one of the bigger ones. We already know about Zach Calzada. He had surgery on his non-throwing shoulder, but I did see that during the scrimmage game this last Saturday, he was actually able to do a few reps. Now, was he throwing the ball? No, but he was handing the ball off, which again is kind of like one of those things where, yeah, he's getting out there and, running the drill. He's running the play. He just may not be throwing it. And you know what? I'm fine with that. I'm good. I'm honestly very happy to see that he's kind of making this progress already, because it honestly sounded like, to me, I don't know if it did to you, but TJ Finley is kind of running away with us as far as quarterback position. And I was like, Zach Calzada, I feel like, is a very capable quarterback as well. He just, has been injured, which hurts his opportunity because he's not able to go through as many reps as somebody like TJ is. And so, I'm going to be very curious to see, especially this summer and fall, what kind of news comes out about Zach Calzada, and if he's continuing to, perform the way that he did back at Texas A&M. or what's happened after, especially an injury. It's a little bit of a question mark. One other injury that I wanted to note was Javarius Johnson, one of our wide receivers. He had a hamstring injury, and he has to just sit out a little bit of the spring practices. I would not be shocked if he doesn't play during A-Day. So if you don't see him out there running around catching passes, don't be shocked. It's just a slight hamstring injury, nothing major. Let's talk about a few things that have happened over the last 2 to 3 weeks. I guess really 2 weeks of kind of spring practice. So we've had really these last few weeks have been, it sound like they're making a lot of progress, especially, now we've got a new offensive and defensive coordinator in here. And, second and third weeks are really, we're getting into installing as much as we possibly can. So a lot of that was very key for this coaching staff to get in there and teach everybody the very basics of, their different formations and ways that they want to run plays. And that was, kind of getting established in the spring, and then I'm sure finalized, come the fall. So we've now had a couple scrimmages, and the second scrimmage, which I thought was kind of interesting, they said it wasn't as much live ball, kind of heavy hitting, which is probably related to all the injuries that had happened. But it was a lot of short yardage kind of situations and goal line situations, which I don't know, Jared. As soon as I heard that, I was like, thank you, Harsin, for doing that, because we need that stuff.
Yeah, you got to be able to put the ball in the end zone, and I don't know how you get over that, that hump. I mean, every time we've struggled every year, Gus or Harsin, that's what we're practicing. But yeah, there's something that clicks eventually, and you're able to. And the short yardage, I mean, I think we all know we win the Bama game if we can get short yardage gains, and we probably win a few more too. So you got to be able to, when you need a yard, you got to be able to go get a yard, especially with a running back like Tank.
Yeah. It's almost like, it kind of reminds me in basketball. I've been watching a lot of this March Madness, and the teams, at the end, when they have, a minute left and the game's still close, like the teams that end up winning it a lot of times have the experience. They've been there. They know, hit the key free throws, make this right decision. And I feel like some of that is kind of translated into football in a slightly different way. It's the, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 situations where you got to just, you got to make the right decisions and run it to perfection when it really matters. And if you don't, that's when drives stall in football. That's when you have to go to a field goal in a game that might need an actual touchdown, not just, 4 or 5 field goals in a game to win it. And so you gotta put the ball in the end zone. And we saw that way too many times this last year. And like you said, even dating back to Gus, like that was a struggling point for our team. And then a big talking point is around quarterbacks and kind of where that's at. We'll hold off on, talking a little bit more about that and where we think each of the quarterbacks are kind of fitting into this quarterback room until our next segment, where we talk about A-Day and what we're going to predict that's going to happen during A-Day. So let's jump over to, previewing A-Day and what we expect, what Harsin's told us about A-Day. And for those of you coming, I'll be there and really enjoying a good Saturday on the plains. But Jared, I'm really excited just to, see specifically our offense. I know we're probably not gonna be able to see all the fruits of this, especially, we're supposed to be offensively more run heavy than we were last year. And I'm personally really pumped up about that. We were screaming it. Jared, how many times last year were we like, just run the ball, Bobo, just call a play where Tank runs the ball.
Hey, AJ, I don't know about you. I've never questioned a coach's decision in my life. I sit on the couch and I'm very calm and agree with everything. I agree with everything they do.
Well, you're a different breed, man.
That must have just been you. I never said that. No,
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's a total joke. I lose my mind when I'm watching a football game, especially when it's like all right. Penn State is the biggie to me because I mean, Bama he did run it, we just couldn't get it, or we couldn't get out of bounds. Penn State was like, you're down in the red zone. You've been running it pretty well all game. You can either hand it to Tank or you can throw a fade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like that's not even. I don't even know why we're calling a timeout for that decision. Just hand the ball to Tank.
Right.
I mean, all right. There's a couple things like nobody wants to lose a game, no doubt. But there's a couple things that I think fans would put up with if you put the ball in your best player's hands and it just doesn't work. I mean, everybody gets mad about losing, but then when you calm down, you're like, well, we gave it a best shot.
Yeah.
But when you take the ball away from your best player's hands and you still lose the game, there's a lot to be questioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I mean, I know Harsin's said it multiple times, but he grew a lot from this last year. And I think a lot of the growing that happened was how, games played out. He understands, I hope now more than ever, it's important to ride that hot player. And I really hope that, Harsin, does that. Not saying we want to ride him, into injury or anything, but if he's a hot player, keep him going. Just keep him going, especially if it's a critical situation. So that's just my thoughts on it, and I really hope we can kind of make that transition this year into really, like we said, the short yard, goal line situations. That's going to be key for me.
What one non X's and O's part about A-Day, if people don't keep up with the weather, it's actually a high of 58 on Saturday. So everybody be aware of that. It's going to feel a little more like legit football weather than it sometimes does at an A-Day.
Yeah, sometimes you come to an A-Day and it's 85 degrees and you get sunburned out there. I still think you can get sunburned, but it's not gonna be as hot.
Yeah, 58 is pretty chilly for Auburn, Alabama. In April.
Yeah, definitely. Another kind of note here: Harsin still hasn't figured out exactly. We're recording this on Sunday, what kind of setup he's going to do for this. And I think part of A-Day, what he said was normally you'd want to kind of do a 50-50 split kind of thing where you'd have, essentially one team versus another. But he said just they may not be able to do that. And I bet you some of that had to do with some of the injuries going on. So it may just be kind of a offense versus defense, which would be fine with me. You run, first team against second string defense, kind of back and forth, something like that. And I would love to see that. One other note, just before we get into, offense and defense and what we're thinking about what's going to happen in A-Day this week, is I wanted to talk about how I feel like this is really the first time that Harsin has had essentially all of his staff that I would honestly argue were the staff that he really wants. And also kind of with that, we had a huge transfer out of a lot of players, whether that was for, not getting enough play time, or just simply they didn't agree necessarily with how Harsin was leading the program. So, they wanted to move on. So I just think it's really interesting that now I'm sure there's some still there could be still some like players that may not agree with everything Harsin's doing, but they're on the team. And I think there's more players that are now either directly recruited by Harsin, either through the transfer portal or, National Signing Day, that are on this team and are behind Harsin. And I think that's a great thing for this team's unity, especially with, all the craziness that happened in this offseason. I mean, it just makes me think back to the Cam Newton days where, where he was accused of, taking money and just all the craziness that was behind that helped unify that team. And from what some of the players have said, that event, that the craziness that was, all the rumors around Harsin, that unified the team. And I'm really excited to see kind of that playing out on the field, because I think that builds a lot more trust between you and the guy that you're playing right next to. Hey, we went through this all together. We believed in this team when nobody else did. And I think that's key coming into this season.
Hey, Auburn fans, I want to take a quick timeout from this episode to bring your attention to something very special. Here at the E2C Network, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best content for Auburn fans out there. And best of all, it's free to you. But just because it's free doesn't mean there aren't costs, especially when you have a library of hundreds of podcasts, videos, blogs, and more. Many of you have reached out and asked how you can support this network in the past. Well, now I have your answer. It's called the E2C Network Booster Club over at patreon.com/E2C Network. There you'll find a membership monthly reward system where you can sign up for as little as $1 and get different perks at different tiers. Some of those perks include things such as apparel, eligibility to join us on future podcasts, recognition as an E2C Network booster, exclusive communications, and bonus content that is available nowhere else. If you love this network and want to help us keep producing podcasts like this one, please head on over to patreon.com/E2C Network to join the E2C Network Booster Club. You can also get there by going to our website, e2cnetwork.com/support. Whether you decide to join or not, we are still so appreciative that you would support us by just listening and being here, because each and every one of you is part of our E2C Network family. Well, that's it. Timeout's over. Let's get back into the episode.
All right, so let's talk about offense here. So we got Eric Keesaw. So him at offensive coordinator plus Harsin. There's been a lot of talk about quarterback battle. And right now it sounds like TJ Finley's kind of a few steps ahead of everybody else. While Zach Calzada, kind of expected for both of them to kind of duke it out, but Zach Calzada hasn't been able to because of his injury. And then really right behind them are Robbie Ashford and Holden Garner, and both Robbie Ashford and Holden Garner have put in some good time. They're getting more and more reps, and that's a good thing. That means come fall or even next year, when I think either one of those guys, they could step up and could be our starters next year. I don't think necessarily this year they could, but maybe, who knows? Robbie Ashford is just a talented human being. Maybe he comes in and he performs at a super high level, and Harsin wants him in there. So what's kind of your thoughts, Jared, on the quarterback situation right now, and specifically around 8A? Like, who do you think is going to get the most snaps from the quarterback room?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, we already kind of know what you have with TJ, I guess, from last year, and if whatever improvements this year. So, they might throw Robbie. You might see more Robbie and Holden in A-Day to see how they perform in front of. I mean, I know it's not the real deal, but it's a crowd. How are they handling that? So you might see a little more of that. I mean, you're going to see TJ, no doubt. But I think it's all a moot point. I think Zach's the starter. I don't know if the coaches know that yet, but I think Zach's going to be the starter. Just TJ, right? TJ is always going to look good in drills. Like, TJ has a rocket arm and he throws a strike. TJ's problem is in-game decisions of not looking off a receiver, and then the touch pass on the deep ball. And I'm not knocking TJ. TJ would destroy me in any type of athletic event. But if we're being fair and critiquing, I think TJ is always going to look real good in drills. You counter that with, you watch some of Zach Calzada's playing, and he's able to keep the drives alive by moving the pocket a little bit, always looking downfield, much better touch on the deep ball. He's not as strong an arm as TJ has the strongest arm on the team, in my opinion, but that doesn't win you ball games.
Yeah.
So I think it's Zach. I think Robbie could surprise people if Robbie can be very accurate and pick up the playbook. Robbie's the most athletic on the team. And then, Holden could be a wild card if he was to pick things up, because Harsin loves him. I mean, he's the guy that was, before was it Sean Davis? Seth Davis? Who did we hire for like a week? offensive coordinator.
Oh yeah, the guy from Seattle.
Yeah, when he was talking, he was doing a phone interview with him and Pete Carroll. I mean, he was just gushing about Holden being a future, All-American. So,
yeah,
if I had to put money on it, Zach's my starter, and TJ will be if that happens, TJ will be the listed backup. I think it would be Robbie technically if Zach went down. That's my thoughts.
I could be. I mean, I'm still putting my camp in TJ Finley, just because I think he's getting a lot more exposure right now, and rightfully so. He's getting the most reps. And now, honestly, I don't think he had a spring last year, so he wasn't able to practice with us, and now he does. He's getting a lot more reps. He's already been in the system. I think that says a lot. And Zach's essentially a year behind in essence. And, that's not to say, somebody that's a year behind like Zach Calzado can, I think he could take it over, and it is possible. I think backup situation, I'd put Zach in there, kind of backup if TJ was not doing so hot, which, we've seen that where he's gone in, not performed well, and we need to have somebody else come in there and, pick up, and maybe just give a little spark to the team. And I could see somebody like Calzado doing that. Let's talk about running back situation here. So obviously Tank Jarquez, his right leg got injured, out for a few weeks. But as far as A-Day goes, especially with the new announcement of Sean Jackson, he's one of our running backs getting put on scholarship. I would not be surprised if we talk about Sean Jackson a lot on our review of how A-Day went. Like if you've watched, the little bits that, media's put out about the practices that they've watched, number 44, Sean Jackson, is all over them. And he looks like a beefy dude. Like he will run over a man. Like, kind of reminds me, I don't know, Jared, I kind of have this picture in mind. It's either kind of like this bigger Sean Shivers, or maybe like a slightly smaller, like Cam Petway type feel, or even Cameron Arts-Payne, like bigger dudes in the running back room, that if you're a defense, he's going to pound you. And we need some of that, especially with how good Tank is, how shifty he is. We might just need kind of like a different change of pace with just a bigger dude like a Sean Jackson. So I would honestly predict Sean Jackson to be one of our talking points next week.
Yeah, I don't think Demario Austin, I don't think he entered early, did he? He's the freshman out of Atlanta. I don't think he's on the team yet. I think
correct.
He's still in high school. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Sean probably gets the ball. I don't even know if we hand the ball to Tank. I mean, they may, they'll probably do it just for the fans, but he won't get a lot of carries in A-Day.
Yeah. Ooh, I just thought about this. So last A-Day, they did some like kind of gimmicky things that I didn't always necessarily agree with. Yeah, did it get the fans excited? Sure. But they especially like, kickoff returns, and I think they even did it a couple times with like a specific like run play to start this kind of a different drive. They would kind of do like a sweep or something, and it kind of looked like the defense half gave up and ended up scoring a huge touchdown or whatever. I'm curious if they do that in the second year of A-Day. I'll be curious to see if that happens.
It's possible. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how they wind up, doing all this. I feel like every coach does it different, and even Gus would just from year to year would do it different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I honestly expect Harsin to kind of, put his own flavor on it almost every year, just based on what he thinks this team needs to get out of it. Because, as much as it is for the fans to be able to watch it, it's still about the players and practicing. These are critical scrimmages that they get to practice full on, that, they're going to learn a lot from this. And especially coming to the summer, players are going to watch back on their film and, have their next goals to work on. And the summer is going to be key for all that. And really, a lot of this isn't just like, oh, can you run this drill? most players at this level can run pretty much any drill. It's a matter of, these scrimmage type or live ball situations that I think is really going to be a big key for these guys. And again, I think there's a lot of importance to these players performing well, even in a scrimmage type situation like 8A. As far as wide receivers go, and I thought this was kind of interesting. They were asked about wide receiver, or Harsin was, about who's standing out. Top guy, Malcolm Johnson Jr. Was first guy out of Harsin's mouth. And I think that says something big about Malcolm Johnson Jr. that I would love, because last year we didn't necessarily have that deep ball threat like a Seth Williams or a Sammy Coates of old. We didn't really have that last year. Maybe Kobe Hudson at best, but I feel like even he wasn't our super deep ball threat. I would love to see if Malcolm Johnson Jr. kind of molds into that. That would get me so excited about him and what our wide receivers could do if we even have one threat like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think, he's doing it more because you can tell he's coming out of his shell a little bit, but Harsin doesn't individualize players very much. It's just not who he is typically. But so if he mentioned you, it's a good thing. Like you really stood out to him, and he is doing more of that. I mean, you can tell he's a different kind of coach now. But I don't think it was him. I think it might have been Ike Hilliard. Has just been super impressed with I may say it wrong, Tavares Dawson.
Yeah.
So like these are all young guys, and they said Dawson is just so raw. He's like so talented, but last year he didn't understand route schemes, and now he's like running correct routes. And so, I think we forget because a lot of these guys didn't play at all. Some of them redshirted that, we lost, and we did. We lost some talent at receiver, but we actually have 4 stars with talent that have just never seen the field. So if these guys come on, you never know, man. Could be a diamond in the rough. One of these guys really clicks. You got Jay Fair. He's getting a lot of praise. I mean, he's a true freshman. He just enrolled early.
Yeah.
And he was the one out of high school that everybody said, hey, if somebody's going to contribute early, it's going to be Jay Fair.
Oh, and I still agree. I think of all the guys, he's going to be probably one of the guys that, even if he's not a starter game one, I think he works into a starting role at some point during the season.
Sticking to my guy, I think it's Camden Brown. Sticking to my guy because he's so big and got great hands, but he wasn't able to enroll early, so he's missed a lot of what Jay Fair has not. So it's going to be tougher for him to fill that gap. But we got some guys coming in. I know we're going to talk about this, but tight end wise, Landon King. I mean, he's going to be on the field, possibly at receiver spots. So we have some options. It's just unknown. Like they got talent, but are they going to put it together?
Yeah. And I mean, everybody's talking about, the depth in wide receiver is, and that's rightfully so. We have a big hole really behind like the starting guys. And I think where you'd mentioned guys like Landon King that are, came in as a tight end, but now, it's kind of up in the air. Is he going to be more of a wide receiver or a tight end? And I would love to see, especially guys like John Samuel Schenker just kind of fill in the gaps. I mean, that's what we used him for last year. And I mean, what's also kind of cool is we've got other guys. I mean, we talk a lot about John Samuel Schenker because he's been here forever, but Landon King, Brandon Frazier, Tyler Fromm, who's also been here, I think this would be his 3rd, maybe even 4th year. And we got Luke Deal as well. And all of those guys have pretty good pass catching ability. So, if you kind of work in some of the tight ends in different formations, that could be a good way, to kind of keep the team balanced on offense. You're not relying too heavy on us running the ball too much. And if they start, not respecting our tight ends, you just slip them out and it's a 20, 30-yard gain. And that could be really big. As far as offensive line for this year and specifically this 8A, it's going to look pretty similar to this last year. I think one of the keys that I'm going to be looking for, especially in this 8A, is how are they blocking, especially with run. Like any kind of run play, I want to see if they're opening up holes for our running backs to hit. because that seemed to be kind of one of the issues. Even though Tank, as good as he is, if there's no hole there, he can't get past the line of scrimmage. But if you give him even the slightest little glimpse of a hole, that's when he can really start taking off. All right, Jared, any other comments about offense before we move on to defense and then finish out with special teams for this A-Day game?
No, sir. I think we've covered it pretty well.
All right. So defense, well, again, we've got a new defensive coordinator. And that is even after, Derek Mason, left, and then you're still, I'm still kind of puzzled about that one, but that's all right. I think the kind of the reading between the lines, I think it had to do a lot with Derek Mason didn't always buy into kind of Harsin's vision for the program. And guess what? The guy that was kind of, waiting in the wings for our defensive coach position, he's been there. He's been there for Harsin. And now we're at a good spot that I think at least the main coaches are really on board with, how Harsin wants to lead this program. And I think that's good. That unity is also going to help this defense as well. So one thing that I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on. So I feel like turnovers in an A-Day game can be a little polarizing. It can either be viewed as a good thing or it could be viewed as a bad thing. Just because, a good thing, hey, the defense is doing really well. Bad thing, these quarterbacks are just throwing interceptions, running backs are fumbling the ball, whatever. But put that aside. How many turnovers do you think this defense is going to have in this A-Day scrimmage?
2.
That's a good number. I was actually thinking at least 1.
Yeah.
But I could see 2, like 1 fumble and an interception. I think that would be awesome. Kind of get something like that. So
yeah, I just think I think you're going to see more offensive players that will not be starting in the come fall. So, I mean, when you have that happening, you're going to have, some miscommunication. You're going to have some issues. So I think you'll see more starters on defense, just because of a little more depth there, less banged up on that side, other than Owen, obviously. But, yeah, I think the offense is going to be outmanned.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm a defensive player at heart. So even if there's like 3 turnovers, I'm not necessarily worried about the offense because we all know it. Spring game, you only have a certain number of plays that you can run, and that helps the defense. And defense, for the most part, a lot of times knows what's coming. So, they can kind of jump the route if they want to, because they've seen this play, a dozen times already in practice. So I think that kind of leads to defense, again, tending to look better. So expect that to kind of happen. And if you don't see the offense performing as highly as you hope, remember, we still we have our second running back, Darquez, and maybe our starter, Zach Calzada, not even playing in the spring game. As far as defensive line goes, we've got some studs this year. Eku Leota, Derek Hall. I mean, you say their names, and any Auburn fan is probably going to be like, yes, I can't wait for these guys to just get in the opposing quarterback's face and just get a ton of sacks. And honestly, I'm honestly mostly really excited for them over what I'm normally excited about, which is, linebackers or even sometimes defensive backs, because I played a defensive back in high school. But I think Eku and Derek are going to this is their year for them. I think both of them could just perform at the super high level, get a lot of great exposure, and then go into the NFL and be great players. I think both of them kind of have that potential. So I'm really excited about seeing what they do in 8A. For linebackers, we've got Owen Papo, who we've already mentioned is still kind of recovering from an injury that happened this last year. He won't be practicing during the 8A game. And I'm really excited to kind of see what's behind him. I think there will be a little bit of a drop-off. That's to be expected. But I think that could be a good opportunity for some of these younger linebackers to step up. For secondary, this was kind of cool. So there was an interview with Zach Etheridge that I was watching, and he named a few people that I hadn't really thought about, kind of making an impact. And one of those guys was DJ James, who's a transfer, and it kind of piqued my interest. And Zach was speaking very, very highly about him. So I'm going to be watching for DJ out on the field, see if he does any kind of, if he's doing his job, and that'll be really exciting to see.
Another player that Harsin has mentioned almost every time he's talked is Caleb Wooden, Colby's true freshman brother. And it was funny because Harsin said, yeah, he apparently had 2 turnovers in the game the other day. He sent me a screenshot of his foot inbounds. He's like, I still need to check that out. I don't know if that's true or not, but he was kind of joking. But it's funny that Caleb sent him a screenshot showing he was in.
Yeah.
And Harsin's kind of giving him a hard time about it. But that kid, true freshman, I mean, it's hard to put a kid in the secondary that's a true freshman because, if you mess up, there's not much help behind you. But
right.
I mean, the way they're talking about that guy, he's coming on quick. I'll say that.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It feels like every interview with pretty much any staff, defensive at least, they're talking about Caleb Wooden, and I can't wait to see it for myself on A-Day, see what Caleb's kind of out there doing. So yeah, that's again another bright spot to look at on this defense.
Well, and everybody says this, but when that thing was going on with Harsin, he put an Instagram post of him in the Auburn gym, and it was something along the lines of, y'all keep talking, I'll keep working, something like that. Like he's like, I'm shutting out all the noise. I'm here to be the best.
Yeah.
So, sometimes people just talk that to put it on Instagram, and sometimes they mean it. And it sounds like he might be one of those that means it.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. Last little topic here for special teams. So our special teams, it sounds like they're still kind of trying to shuffle things around, figure out kind of the 2 deep on special teams. So I would honestly kind of expect our special teams, you get to see a few guys, doing a few kickoffs, kicking a few long field goals, doing a few punts. Like, I feel like we're probably going to see a lot of different guys doing special teams, returning punts or returning kicks. I feel like that kind of those plays, particularly special teams, are it kind of up in the air, and that's kind of exciting, but it's also a little scary. I've heard Anders was coming back. That's really awesome for our kicking game, but you never really 100% know how a guy's going to respond coming back from an ACL injury, especially somebody who's like a kicker who relies on their leg. So, I mean, I have hopes that guys like Anders are going to come in there, but you just don't really know until they get in there. So, Jared, any other thoughts before we get out of here?
No, not really. I mean, it's just, my main goal is get out of spring, try not to lose too many more players in the portal, bring in a few to fill in some gaps. I still would like to get, a veteran receiver. But I don't feel like we're going after him. Like, there was an Arkansas State guy who had visited. He just signed with South Carolina, and people got mad, and some insiders were like, yeah, we weren't really pursuing him. So I don't know if they're really, really liking what they're seeing from the young guys, and they just don't want to just waste a portal. But
yeah,
I think we have enough roster spots that I would probably do that. But yeah, other than that, just try to get out of here. No season-ending injury, ACLs. Other injuries you can recover from by fall, and try not to lose too many people in the portal.
Yeah, I definitely reiterate a lot of that, just because we really need as many players coming into this next year as possible. And if that means this A-Day isn't as physical as I would hope, I'm okay with that. And I honestly, just, like you said, it could just be, a few standout plays. Like most A-Days, you see, 4 or 5 like really big plays that kind of define the A-Day. And, those are exciting. Those are kind of what the fans are looking for. Something else I'm going to be looking for is specifically on defense. Like, I've heard we're not really doing a whole bunch different than what Derek Mason did, but I want to see for my own eyes is that really true? Because I mean, I love Derek Mason's defense, and if we kind of stick with a similar kind of scheme and it's working, why switch? I mean, the guys are already used to it. Why throw another way of doing defense at them? Just use what's working. So really excited to kind of see how that plays out. Jared, how can people stay in touch with you?
You can just find me on Facebook under my name, Jared Davis.
And you can find me on Twitter at AJAY, JAY_. It's always great to be an Auburn Tiger, and War Eagle.
War Eagle.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on the E2C Network. On your way out, I want to remind you to stop by e2cnetwork.com. It's your one-stop shop for all our content across our podcast, YouTube channel, and much more. To stay up to date with us, make sure you're following social media accounts such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. While our content here may always be Auburn sports heavy, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. War Eagle.